Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always by my co-host Nick Filato. Coming down a little bit after last night's loss. We were angry. I was angry. I listened back this morning, Nick. I had a crazy rant on there, but, in the moment, in the heat of it, emotions, played a factor there for all of us, I believe. I said this online today, Nick. I was doom scrolling last night till I looked at my phone. It was like 4:13 a.m. when I finally stopped, and then I couldn't sleep for like 2 hours. I saw the sun come up this morning. It was horrible. I'm on 2 or 3 hours sleep today. Just a disaster all around. This team has put us in. But we move forward. We have time today to look at the tape, and that's what we did. We watched the All-22 film. There were some positives, which we'll go over. Obviously, there were a lot of negatives, which we'll go over. But first, I want to talk about something that you brought up to me off pod, Nick, that I thought was a great point that I haven't seen discussed a lot on Giants Twitter today or by any analysts or beat reporters. And it was the impact of the loss of Daniel Bellinger. And obviously, those know now, Daniel Bellinger and John Michael Schmitz got injured on the tush-push play, the 4th-and-1 sneak that the Giants didn't convert, double injury. As you can see from the rest of the game, both before and after Bellinger left the field, the Giants weren't able to run 12 personnel the way they wanted to with Bellinger not on the field. You mentioned it best. Cager had, 5 snaps? Lawrence Cager is not Daniel Bellinger. Lawrence Cager can't block like Daniel Bellinger. Lawrence Cager doesn't know the offense like Daniel Bellinger. Lawrence Cager has not been taking first-team reps with Daniel Jones like Daniel Bellinger. The chemistry is not there either with Daniel Jones, just in the passing game alone. And it impacted what they could do in the sense that you saw a lot of shotgun. You saw a lot of 11 personnel. You saw in some ways going away because they did run the ball out of shotgun, but you saw them go away from running from under center, in my opinion, after Bellinger's absence. So I want to start there, Nick. What do you make of that impact and how can the Giants really adjust? Because we kind of get the feeling now that this team isn't as effective out of 11 personnel as they are out of 12 with Bellinger and Waller on the field.
The hope is Wan'Dale Robinson will change that. With him coming back to the lineup, he offers something different than Paris Campbell, and maybe you can establish, I don't know what the state of this offensive line, a quick passing attack like the Giants did at the end of the season out of 11 personnel. I'm not as hopeful for that, but the Giants went into this game with the thought, and this isn't an excuse, but I do believe it's a reality, that they would lean on their 12 personnel, try to run the football, establish a run like we saw a little bit early in the game, and then work the play action pass to spread that defense out, stretch them vertically, stretch them horizontally. But once Daniel Bellinger got hurt on the tush push, I don't even know if you really saw 12 personnel. You saw some big offensive linemen with Matt Parrott coming in. Lawrence Cager received 5 snaps. I think some of them, Darren Waller came off the field. Darren Waller played 69 of the 75 snaps. So it's not like the Giants were going to go in 12. And you can't go in 12. This was something that we discussed around final cuts. Look, if you keep Lawrence Cager, if something happens to Daniel Bellinger, you have 2 former wide receivers as your tight end. This team is predicated on creating explosive plays when they do off the play action passing attack, Dan. So if Bellinger goes down, you're not going to threaten anybody in 12 personnel double Y sets, which is a huge part of this offense. So I think that Bellinger injury, man, I know it doesn't seem like that much. He's a second-year tight end. We rave about him on this podcast, rightfully so, in my opinion. But I think that really took some of the wind out of the sails of the Giants offense when there really wasn't that much wind to begin with.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Nick, especially when you look at the game script, right? Like Seattle didn't score any points really on offense the entire game. They had 1 touchdown drive with Drew Lock, and until garbage time, that was it. They had a touchdown off a 10-yard field where Daniel Jones fumbled and the pick 6. And so this was a game that was winnable like that. If the Giants were just going to get under center, run the ball, and then use that to work play action, they only had to put up, 13 to 20 points, I think, to win this game without the turnovers from Jones. Obviously, that would mean Jones can't throw a pick 6 and Jones can't fumble inside his own 10. But if they had 0 turnovers in this game, the Giants, I think that was a recipe that would have worked in this specific game plan. It wouldn't have been pretty, but it would have looked a lot like that Bears or Carolina game from last year. But that didn't matter. They just needed to get a win. So I think you're right. It screwed up their whole game plan. And that's why everything looks so horizontal when you look at the passing chart from the first half of that game. Insanity. I've never seen a pass chart look like that. I mean, everything was sprayed in the outside the numbers in the 5-yard range, nothing in the middle of the field, nothing in the 7 to expanded range. And so it's hard in game to adjust, but it does make me think, Nick, like some teams can adjust to injuries in game, right? Like it's not impossible. It's not, we haven't never seen it before where offenses are just derailed by one injury and that's it. And so it just feels like this team doesn't have that in them. It doesn't have that gear right now. And so I like that you bring that up though, because it's something to keep an eye on. We don't know the extent of the Bellinger injury. I think it's a knee, but it's something they're going to have to keep an eye on, obviously.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, but it looked like he grabbed his knee at the end of that play. I just hope he's okay because I do believe he's a very valuable asset as a second string, quote unquote, tight end. But we just know how important 12 personnel is with the construct of this Giants roster. One other thing, too, that I think compounded that issue, JMS ended up getting injured on that same exact tush push play.
Right.
John Michael Schmitz is a center who is a rookie. I get it. But you get Ben Bredesen back from the concussion protocol in the previous week, was not there. He's like, okay, I'm playing left guard. Awesome. First drive, JMS exits the game with, what is it, a concussion? I'm not really 100% certain.
Shoulder.
Now, Ben Bredesen.
Tush push, it was a shoulder.
Yeah. Ben Bredesen has to move to center now, and you're bringing
Right.
Shane Lemieux back into the football game until he ends up exiting and Mark Lewinsky comes back in. None of those names I just mentioned should be playing in those respective positions in the National Football League. Ben Bredesen is not a center. I get they cross-trained him. This is a little bit different. Ben Bredesen had a lot of mistakes throughout the film. Shane Lemieux, look, I don't want to just trash on this guy. He shouldn't be playing in the NFL. Shane Lemieux was getting tossed around by guys like Draymond Jones and players like that. It's not like he's going up against Aaron Donald in this matchup, and he's just getting tossed to the side. Marcus McKeithen, look, I like him as a terrible game, but I like him as a developmental player. But if you're relying on him to start on an offensive line that has a guy who's not a center playing center, and then Shane Lemieux, and then Evan freaking Neal on his right side, that's a terrible recipe for a disaster. You're throwing Marcus McKeithen to the fire here. So it's just a bunch of, I've used this term before, but a bunch of cascading effects, Dan, are plaguing this Giants offense right now. And the lack of competent depth in the interior parts of the offensive line is one of the primary reasons for that.
And you mentioned Bredesen having to go over, like you said, yeah, he's been cross-trained to some extent to play center, but he hasn't actually done it in game. And what makes that even crazier is two factors. One, after the game, I think it was Duggan or Art or one of the beat reporters said they saw him basically limping around the locker room. So he's hurt. He's playing hurt. That's horrible. Shane Lemieux also left the game with an injury. But the second factor is, I know it's year 5 and we expect more, but I don't know how much control Daniel Jones has over these pre-snap protections. Like I talked on the reaction pod about the free blitzer when Devin Witherspoon came in and Jones was completely unaware, looking to his right, sacked. Like I'm surprised that wasn't a forced fumble sack because Jones was just totally unaware of it. And then, the discussion as well is the center supposed to be calling out protection. John Michael Schmitz wasn't in the game. That's a problem. But there were 2 or 3 other times, 1 or 2, I should say, other times, 3 total times where there was bad pre-snap protection calls and bad pre-snap protection checks and no sliding when they needed to slide. And like maybe when he went out, John Michael Schmitz, that went to shit. And Daniel Jones can't do it apparently, or they want Daniel Jones to focus on trying to process post-snap. I don't know, man, but all I know is Tom Brady, the shit doesn't happen. Eli Manning, the shit doesn't happen. Those guys were in control of everything. They had to check pre-snap, they had to set the protections, and they had to put process post-snap. And we're in year 5, and I expect more from Daniel Jones. And I expect more from Brian Dable to try to put that on Daniel Jones's plate, because there has to be some kind of fallback for this type of situation where you lose your center, and he's the one in charge of making all these calls, and you have a backup in, and now you're left speechless and in a terrible position. So I really thought that put them in a bad spot. You mentioned it, but he's a nice guy. He's a hard worker, but Shane Lemieux can't play in the NFL for the Giants. He shouldn't be playing in the NFL in total. It was a bad draft pick to begin with. He never looked good at all in pass protection. This game, he had some moments in the run game, but then he had some really bad moments. The clip you sent me earlier that I put on Twitter, Nick, we can maybe run that right now, or we don't have to run that. It's probably,
I think I have it I think I have it in the offense.
We'll run it at some point, but he just gets tossed to the ground on a run play in the most crazy fashion I've seen for a starting NFL offensive lineman. And that's just the run game where he's supposed to be at his best, Shane Lemieux. So he can't start another game. Like I'd rather pick someone off the street, honestly. And we'll talk about what the Giants have tried to do to kind of, combat that and all the injuries in a second. But I'd rather pick anyone off the street, literally, to play over Shane Lemieux. Go ahead.
Play Mark Lewinsky. He's on the roster.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'd play Mark Lewinsky. Like, enough of that. There's something weird's going on behind the scenes, obviously, there. I'm sure he hated being benched in the first place for Marcus McKethan. But, like, he still has to play. He's a professional. He's getting paid a good amount of money. So if you say play, you play. And if they say play, he plays, I mean. Go ahead.
I didn't really want to read into this too much, but Bobby Johnson, when he was interviewed, I think it was on Friday when they come out with the positional coach interviews on YouTube. Go check them out for the Giants YouTube. He alluded to something of the fact that it's a collective decision, which isn't really novel, but the way he phrased it made it sound like Joe Shane has something to do with the fact that McKeithen is in there over
Okay.
Glowinski. I think it could have been interpreted that way. I don't think Bobby Johnson was throwing shade or doing it deliberately. But when you do think about it, and Mark Lewinsky was terrible, I get that. But why is Shane Lemieux getting snaps over a guy like Mark Lewinsky at this point?
Right.
My point is, I think there is something, and might not have anything to do with Joe Shane, but I think there is something going on behind the scenes with the Mark Lewinsky situation as to why the Giants could suffer this many interior offensive line injuries, and you're still not putting your highest paid interior offensive lineman that wasn't, yeah, he is the highest paid interior offensive lineman out there. That's just a little odd.
Yeah, especially because he had all the snaps last season. He has continuity blocking next to Neal. There's so many
Not
factors.
good.
No, not good, but still somehow better than Shane Lemieux, which is
Yeah.
insane. And you mentioned Marcus McKethan. Like, it was a fun story against a bad Cardinals defensive front, but he's looked pretty bad the last 2 games against real defenses. And the Seahawks don't even have that really good of a pass rush. And so there were some reps that were really ugly for McKethan in this game. And then you talk about Neal, man. We're now 4 games in on Neal. Neal, dude, like, I'm getting really worried about Neal being
Yes.
just a abject failure and a total bust at this point. Maybe that can be solved and saved at right guard. I don't know. I mean, he played on the left side. His best tape on the left at Bama came on the left side. We know he's not going to play there for the Giants. Andrew Thomas is playing there, but he's just so slow, like off the snap. It's just insane to watch him.
Dan, have you ever like been by a lake and you stepped in the muck and your feet get stuck and you're like, oh shit, and you try to like lift your feet out of that's what Evan Neal looks like trying to cut
Yeah,
off a wide angled rusher. I
crazy.
sent you I sent you a clip, and it just seems like anytime a defense aligns with a 4 technique, meaning a defensive player directly over the top of Evan Neal, and then a linebacker stacked, doesn't have to be directly stacked, but a linebacker kind of looking like he could come through the B gap. He's chilling. He might be coming on the blitz, and the Giants aren't sliding protection, meaning that all you're going to have is McKeithen and Neal on that side. The wide rusher is going to beat Neal to his set point because Neal has to
Every time.
respect the 4 technique, because the linebacker could come through the B gap, which means McKeithen would take the linebacker, Neal would take the 4 technique, and Jones would have to either get rid of the football to take that edge, throw hot, do something to protect from that wide rusher. But Neal doesn't have the foot speed to cut off the wide rusher. And this is something that we've seen defenses start to hone in on. We saw Seattle do it several different times. Neal just does not have the athletic ability and speed to get out there. I'm sorry. I get it. He did a split squat jump. He looks good with his shirt off for a 360 pounder. He's not quick with his feet. He's very, very slow footed. It just is what it is at this point. I think there's a reason why he didn't test at the combine. I think there's a reason why he didn't test at his pro day. I think it's because those numbers were going to be shit and he would have fell down the draft board. He had nothing to gain by having good numbers because he was being discussed in the top 5 already.
That's a great point by you, Nick. And the only thing that I find like so concerning about, like not concerning, but just like so confusing about that is like Orlando Brown Jr. tested the combine, had the worst testing in the history of the NFL combine. Remember? 0 percentile. And like he's found a way to make it work in the NFL due to his size and his technique. Like, it's just amazing to me that Evan Neal can't be in that same Orlando Brown Jr. mold. I thought he would be. I thought that, like, to me, I always felt like Neal was more of a floor pick than a ceiling pick. And that's fine. Yeah. But I thought his floor was going to be a guy who just doesn't lose that often around the edge. And the opposite's happening. Like, his floor is a guy who loses every snap around the edge, these speed rushers. And he actually had some decent reps when people tried counter moves, and I felt like, and tried to like win inside against him. And he had some decent reps in the run game too, I thought. And he has had some really good reps in the run game. But it's that, like you said, if he has this one massive deficiency with finding a way to block these speed rushers around the edge, he's going to get killed, and he's going to kill the Giants, because there was back-to-back snaps at one point. I think it was when they came out in the third quarter, maybe, and they were in pass mode at that point. Like, they weren't even threatening run, but there were back-to-back snaps where McKethan had a horrible rep to blow a play up, and then Neal had a horrible rep to blow a play up. And it was just like, well, this is the state of the Giants offensive line right now. And I understand, what people say, and it's true. Like, we're not stupid. We see the film. The biggest culprit for this loss is still the offensive line. We just don't believe that it's the only culprit. That's kind of where we're at differently than I guess other analysts or fans, if you want to call them that, whatever you want to call them. Like, we just can see through that it's not only the offensive line, but it was a really bad performance by this offensive line. And it obviously is impacting Jones.
It was brutal
Yeah.
on the offensive line.
Azudu as well, by the way.
Yeah, I was just about to bring him up, but McKeithen, he's just very raw right now. I don't know how many times he hugged a Seattle defender. He could have been called for so many
A
holding
lot of
penalties.
holding.
He
Yeah,
was
I
just
thought the same
he was
thing.
just hugging. It was like Valentine's Day in first grade out there for McKeithen, bro. The dude was just hugging so many of those guys. And Azudu, look, dude, I didn't feel like he was terrible until really deep into the second half.
Yep.
He just, dude, let him play guard. And
Yeah.
he's not a tackle. He's another one who can't protect his outside shoulder. And I don't really blame him. The guy spent much of training camp at
Right.
guard. Every time a speed rusher, again, from a wide angle, this wasn't necessarily an athletic ability issue. Like Azudu has a lot quicker feet than Evan Neal, in my opinion, but he didn't know how to use his hands at the top of the pass rushing arc. And he just didn't know that you have more time to stay square to the line of scrimmage. He was always on that like 1.5 steps in his pass set. He was opening his hips, giving that easier edge into the pocket. You got to be more disciplined with your hips in those situations. So, yeah, man, Azudu, it did not look great. I still think Azudu can be a solid football player inside, but pass protection has been his big issue as well. And it's just none of these guys are developing. None of them are developing positively. We always say on this podcast, Mark Schofield quote, it's the trajectory. It's not always ascending. And with the Giants, it's like they drafted these players and they just stagnated and there's no development whatsoever. And you have to start pointing the finger at that point. I'm sorry, you just do.
Yeah, and you have to also not only start pointing the finger, you have to start considering like who's to blame for this at some point. Like I don't love the blame Bobby Johnson stuff just because I don't know enough about offensive line coach. I talked about this last night, but like I don't know what else to do at this point. Where do you turn to like, why are these guys not developing in any way? Like for Neal, it might just be that he's a pure bust, but for some of these other players, they're just not putting together film that is anything to get excited about. And like you said, a big problem in my mind is we have players playing out of position. We have Bredesen playing center. We have Azudu playing left tackle. Like these situations shouldn't occur. These situations shouldn't happen for the Giants. And yet here we are sitting here and seeing it. And it felt like it was all fixed or working in the right direction against Arizona, and then it's just kind of collapsed and concaved on itself.
And one more thing about the offensive line before we bring up something that could end up being important, which is just a crazy thought. The Giants are not the only team dealing with offensive line injuries. They're not the only team playing musical chairs on the offensive line. They weren't the only team doing that on Monday Night Football. The Seattle Seahawks had this same exact problem, yet they were holding up other than Dexter Lawrence just kind of running through the center on several different plays from what I've seen. And I felt like Kayvon and Aziz were also dialed in, specifically Kayvon. I still have some film to watch with the defense, but I just wanted to bring that up too. Like there are a lot of teams with offensive line issues. The Texans have a ton of offensive line issues and they don't look nearly as inept as the New York Giants. So that is a convenient excuse, but I want to bring this up and I think it's important. And I hate the fact that I think it's important, but the Giants signed Justin Pugh to their practice squad. And I think this is a move that is actually, it could benefit the Giants because the Giants right now, they desperately need veteran leadership in the interior parts of their offensive line. You have Mark Lewinsky, who's your only like true veteran, and he's benched. Then you have McKeithen, JMS, Shane Lemieux is essentially not a rookie because he did play back in 2020, but he missed several seasons, a season and a half with injuries. You need a veteran presence. And I think Justin Pugh, just remembering back from his time here in New York as a Giant, when he was a first-round pick back in 2013, he's a good leader, man. Very respectable. I think this type of signing is something that I don't want to get excited about because it's, what is he, like 33 years old? He's an older guy. He's coming off of injuries. But he is a more competent, at least even in his elder age, when he was playing in Arizona, he's more competent than I think any of these other interior offensive linemen not named JMS right now, who's a rookie dealing with a slight injury. That's crazy. That's a terrible situation to find yourself in, Dan, like an absolutely horrid happenstance. But here we are. I just wish the Giants signed him when they had that extended week. So we know they worked him out. If they were thinking about doing it, they probably should have signed him then. So we'd be a little bit more ingratiated with the organization. But I guess the Giants were like, well, Ben Bredesen is back. He's healthy. We'll be fine. Well, guess what? You're not.
Yeah, because he got hurt again. Like I said, Ben Bredesen seen limping in the locker room after the game. I wonder if the signing is more based on the fact that all these guys are injured right now and they may just have nobody to put out there, which is crazy to think about. Like Bredesen can't go. I don't know what they're going to do at center unless John Michael Schmitz comes back fast, which doesn't seem likely.
I would agree with that. I don't think that's a bad point whatsoever. But at the same time, it's like you need to do something. You can't just keep trotting out this interior offensive line. You need to go out and go fishing. Find some freaking interior offensive linemen, man.
The other part of me is like, that was only one part of me. The other part of me is like, I am a little bit, quote unquote, excited That's probably
Yeah.
not the best word to use, but like, you know,
Intrigued.
intrigued is not even a good word to use
But,
for this one.
but again, like I think you could use intrigued, but you have to understand that we're only intrigued because of what we saw without him. So we're
yeah,
expecting him to be just better than that, which is, you know, not that difficult to be at this point in terms of NFL players, because the Giants are at a low. Like the Giants might have the worst offensive line right now in football, which is
they
crazy with
they
the
do,
investment.
even though they do probably have the worst offensive line in football performance wise. That may not be name wise because again, like you said, Texans, Seahawks dealing with a lot of backups too, but they're just performing better for whatever reason. The word I would use would be relieved by the Justin Pugh signing because not only is he going to bring a veteran presence, Nick, but he has also played some snaps at tackle, which,
Yeah.
believe it or not, might come into the mix at some point if
Jeez.
Zudu continues to struggle and if Andrew Thomas's injury continues to linger, or he has a setback like he already had, or if Neal just gets to a point where you give up on Neal at tackle, which, I didn't love the idea of doing it earlier this season until next year. But, 4 more games of tape like this from Evan Neal, a full half season, and I don't know if I'm going to be ready to give up on him as a tackle. I might be close. Or I might be at the point where he needs new coaching, but he did try to work with like Willie Anderson this offseason, or whoever it was, and like retool his arsenal. And it's like, Anderson's like, yeah, he's firing out of his stance faster. That's one thing we worked on. Well, where is that on the tape? Because I haven't seen him doing it a lot on the tape. It seems like the same old slow fire out of the stance and loss every time to speed rushers. And I can't even imagine how bad this is going to look, by the way, against the Eagles, against Hassan Reddick. Like, I'm
Stop.
scared. It's going to look really fucking bad, man. And
I
so,
saw a
like,
pass. I saw a pass rush with Hassan Reddick this week where he was so low. He was basically crawling
yeah.
on the ground, yet his feet were still flat. I was like, how are you that flexible?
I feel like that was almost what Aziz did on the first sack, the Kayvon sack. He got not that quite to that level, but like
Yeah.
kind of close. Aziz, we'll get to it on the defensive podcast, but I've seen I've only seen probably 60% of the game defensively because I watched a little bit earlier and then I tried to come back to it today before we recorded. But like the defense to me had a fucking good game. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
man.
know, man. Like, at least I've
Yeah.
only really seen like into Q3, a little bit of Q3, but like the pass rush was alive. Everyone looked explosive. Everyone looked active. The energy was great. Kayvon's energy was better than it's been all year as he's added so much to the team. Like you said, Dexter Lawrence had some fire reps. Leonard was fine in there.
Leonard,
Like
yep.
the D line just looked good and looked
DJ
dominant.
Davidson. DJ Davidson's the
Davidson's
third best
fine. It's
defensive
a
lineman.
fine for them. Like he'll be a player on
Yep.
this team next year. Like, so we'll get to that more in the defensive podcast. And I'm just trying to search for any kind of positives here. But yeah, I do
I want to
agree.
bring up one more
Yeah.
thing on the offensive line. Obviously, Andrew Thomas returning is going to improve the offensive line because he's arguably one of the best, or he is one of the best left tackles in football. But I think it also might help the interior offensive line,
Yes.
not just from a continuity standpoint, but now you have Josh Azudu at your disposal to put at left guard or right
Right.
guard or center or wherever the hell you want to play him because he is that versatile. So I think whenever he comes back, Andrew Thomas, that's like the Giants just got to be waiting on that. And it sucks so bad that he wasn't available for this game. We kind of got, lured into the fact that, oh man, he's going to be, nope. But then something he said, it just didn't feel right. So I'm just hoping that he's going to get healthy, dude, because he's just at this point crucial to this offense.
Soft tissue injuries are tricky because him
man.
saying it doesn't feel right could turn into another 2 to 3 weeks. First of all, second of all, if it does feel right and it feels right enough to go back in the game, there's compensation injuries that are available to him now. That's unfortunate. There's also re-aggravation issues with any kind of soft tissue. He may never be the same player he was last year based on this. And it's just so unfortunate, so unlucky. It happened, on the play where he was running the block kick, like he's running down block kick. I mean, it's just insane to get injured on a special teams play. The luck the Giants have had this year when it comes to injuries, they've had Andrew Thomas injured on a special teams play. They had 2 basic starters, and I'm considering Bellinger essentially a starter because they want to use 12, and 12s are what they like to use most. Injured on a tush-push play, like that's another random unlucky injury. It's just, I feel like there was another one I'm just forgetting. Barkley injured at the end of a game when you're icing the clock and you're just trying to run clock out to kick a field goal. Injured on that play when he gets rolled up on, like, it's been a really unfortunate year for injuries of the Giants. The problem I have with that, Nick, is like I look at the Ravens across the pond. They're not across the pond. I look at the Ravens down the turnpike
There you go.
in Baltimore, Maryland, and the Ravens have so many more injuries than the Giants. Like the Ravens are one of the most injured teams I've ever seen. They are without their left tackle, their center, millions of guys in the secondary. Like, both their starting receivers outside of Zay Flowers, Beckham and Bateman didn't play this past week. Mark Andrews missed a week. Like every running back they seem to sign gets injured. Like they're winning football games. Like, so it's like, I hate to blame the injuries when other teams have them too, and they're finding a way. And we're pathetically losing what combined 64-3 on Monday night at home this year. The Giants are down 64-3 against the Seahawks and the Cowboys. Like, it's uncompetitive football right now. And it was competitive for that game until the pick six. And that's the craziest part. It wasn't competitive because the offense did anything. It was competitive because the defense did a lot. But we want to talk about
exactly, man. There were things that broke the Giants' way, right? Like they didn't get the 4th and 1. That didn't break their way. They got all the way down to the end zone through a pick six. So the Giants offense, they were driving the football throughout this game. And then, like we said on yesterday's podcast, Seattle's defense was just trying to give the Giants offense an opportunity to get back into this football game. It's just the offense couldn't seize the opportunity, which is wildly unfortunate when you're paying
even on that pick six drive. Like, yes, even on that pick six drive, like the drive was probably going to be over on that second down play where they got a 1 yard loss, but they got a lucky face mask against Breida and that extended the drive. Like they're about to get hit with 3rd and 11. We know they're not converting 3rd and 11 last night. Like, let's be honest about the situation. So they got some lucky breaks too. The Seahawks missed a field goal. The Seahawks missed the 4th and 1 that I thought was stupid of them to attempt in the first place. I thought up that many points, they should have just taken that field goal. I was greedy and aggressive, but it didn't come back to haunt them. So it's not like they didn't get any breaks, the Giants, in this game. It's just there was a very incompetent offensive game. Let's get into some of that now, Nick. Actually, before we do that, I know there's one more talking point we wanted to touch on before we get into some of the film and stuff like that. Eric Armstead, we talked a little bit about what Devin Witherspoon said, but Eric Armstead after the game for the 49ers
defensive lineman,
he said, Daniel Jones, I'm so disappointed in you. Why would you throw the ball so quick versus us and then let these people have a career day? Why weren't we deserving? And he's, laughing emoji, and just such a disrespect levied toward the Giants, toward Daniel Jones. And I don't even I saw your boy Ed Valentine tweet out how he just thinks it's disgusting by Armstead. Like I'm a trash talker guy. You know this from playing games against me and some competitions that we've had. Like I enjoy the smack talk. I think it's part of the fun. It's I don't blame Eric Armstead at all for this. It's just smack talk. But I just don't get why this doesn't happen to all these other quarterbacks. It feels like Daniel Jones is getting really just trashed week after week by these opposing defensive players. I know Micah Parsons came to his defense today and said, look at the offensive line. And it's not all Daniel Jones's fault, but it's just crazy that the Giants have become this laughing stock for other teams at this point. And it's super unfortunate.
Super unfortunate. There's just no respect for Daniel Jones around the National Football League. And I think a lot of people saw him get the bag. I think a lot of people also saw the dispute, if you will, with the Giants not signing Saquon Barkley. And
yes.
Saquon Barkley has the utmost respect. And then they're equating, well, why are you signing the quarterback and not the running back? I think there are a bunch of reasons why you sign the quarterback over the running back. We've gone over them, I would say, ad nauseum at this point. But at the same time, I think people are just looking at the two players and how talented they are. And they're being like, well, now you need to produce, Daniel Jones, because you're getting paid $40 million. And Daniel Jones just flat out is not producing right now. Is the offensive line shitty? Yes, the offensive line is a big reason why he's not producing. There are a lot of quarterbacks in the National Football League who don't have great offensive lines, yet they still produce. So, and we're going to go over some of this tape here, Dan. And there are plays that Daniel Jones did leave out there on the field. And there were plays like the Devin Witherspoon sack where it's you should probably know that's a 5-man protection. You got to be aware of the fact that cornerback is chilling well inside of your outside receiver. He might be blitzing. You need to account for him. That is a rookie mistake.
And if you're not going to account for it, at least look to his side when you snap the football. Don't look to the other side of the field. What are you doing? Throw the and again, maybe like you said last night, Nick, it's on the center, I guess, the backup center in this spot.
I don't think it is though, man.
I don't think it is
Orlovsky tweeted about it too, and I will listen to him because he's a former NFL quarterback. And
according to Dan Orlovsky, over 50% of the sacks, according to Orlovsky, were on Jones. And I know Giants fans hate to hear that, especially the Jones, stands, but that was what Orlovsky saw. I wasn't sure. It's hard for me to know sometimes, Nick. And I think some of these sacks were this 1 yard losses where he tried to climb the pocket. That to me is just whatever type of shit. But I'll say this about the Eric Armstead thing and the Devin and the comments stuff. I think part of the problem is that NFL players are only have time to really watch the island games, the primetime games. And Daniel Jones has been really freaking bad in primetime. Thursday Night Football against San Francisco, 130 yards, couldn't move the football. And then against the Seahawks last night, who came in with the third worst pass defense, couldn't move the football, looked horrible the whole night, missed throws, missed spots. And And when that, and what's his primetime record now? 1-12, Daniel Jones in primetime games.
Something like that. Something
Yeah.
really
So
bad.
it's like 1-12 or 1-13. And so, that's part of the problem too. They're not seeing the Arizona Cardinals come back. They're only seeing the bad. And so, yeah.
And one thing too about the whole primetime record, it's not great when it's that bad. Typically, though, you're playing good football teams in
True.
primetime. You always got to keep that in the back of your mind. Daniel Jones actually had a couple solid games in primetime that the Giants defense ended up blowing out of their ass, but also some of his worst games were in
Yes.
primetime. If you think back to the
100%.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, the Giants should have won against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What was that, 2021? And Daniel
Yes.
Jones was horrible. And then Daniel
Horrible.
Jones, because of a great catch by Darius Slayton, ended up driving the team down the field and put them in the position to tie the football game. And then he threw the pass behind Dion Lewis. Remember
Late
that?
as hell behind
Late as
Deion Lewis.
hell. Yes. And that was a terrible game. So he hasn't risen to the occasion. Like, if you have to evaluate how Daniel Jones has played, I'm not going to sit here and just be like, oh, he's 1-2. Oh, he sucks. Can't play in prime time. But he has had some pretty damn bad
Yes.
games when the
I would
lights
say
are the
the
brightest.
two worst games of his career came in prime time. I would consider this to be the worst game of his career. And look, if you're going to jump down our throats and be like, but 11 sacks, don't, because we're trying to analyze this independent. We understand that too, and that's part of why he had a bad game. But he also had a bad game independent of that. He looked completely scared in the pocket from basically the first snap on. He was panicking in the pocket. He had no feel for the pocket. He was looking down at the pass rush. He was not looking upfield. When he scrambled, he looked to the sticks. This is what he did. He had corners sitting on his throws. He threw to where corners are sitting. He didn't identify free blitzers. This was a very bad game for Daniel Jones. In my opinion, by far the worst. Not by far, but that or Tampa was probably the worst of his career. And there were some early bad games too as a rookie. Like, he had trouble against the Minnesota Vikings defense. I remember that game as a rookie. He also had trouble versus the Bucs as a rookie. Todd Bowles seems to have a good game plan against him, which, and it's not all that surprising considering Todd Bowles is one of those coordinators who's going to drive everything on the line of scrimmage. But yeah, man, it's a tough spot they're in. Before we get into the tape, actually, I do want to, we've spent 30 minutes without any tape, so we probably should get to it. But I'll say this, Nick, because I wanted to talk to you about this, and I didn't think we had time last night, or I didn't think about it last night. It doesn't impact what I would have done this past offseason, because I still would have played it the same way, regards to Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, because for me, it's all about the long term with Saquon Barkley and extending a running back, especially one who's had his injury history. But it does honestly feel like this offense is noticeably worse without Saquon Barkley on the field. And in some ways, it feels like some of what Barkley said to the media this offseason, like, I feel like my situation's a little different. And our offense was pretty much carried by me. And he didn't say those words, but you could tell he felt that, and he implied it in a lot of ways. Versus, the situation, he mentioned the Mahomes situation or whatever. It does honestly feel a little bit like that. And maybe it's because they can't establish a run game. They can't go under center. I don't know, man. But like, it just feels like when he's not on the field, these past two games, the defenses are just full. Like, they don't respect the passing game to begin with, but when he's not on the field, they are just not respecting anything at all. And everything seems so easy for them, because then they don't have to respect the run game either. And it really makes it difficult. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's some merit to it. But Saquon Barkley was there for the 40-0 absolute shellacking the Giants suffered against the Dallas Cowboys in Week 1. So I'm not going to come at anybody for having that opinion, because I do believe Saquon Barkley is a difference-making player. When you can get a difference-making player on the football field and then a difference-making tackle, it's going to make your offense a lot better. But I don't know if there's as much credence as some would like to believe.
Yeah, no, I still don't think it's as much as some would like to believe, for sure. Like the Robert Griffins of the world who was tweeting about it today. Because then someone destroyed him. It was not even a Giants Twitter guy, like some analyst that I like. I forgot who, maybe Carter Donick or somebody. I'm trying to remember the name. Like, destroyed him. RG3 went off again about the Jones versus Barkley thing. And he's like, here are Saquon Barkley's amazing numbers from his career. Here's the Giants record with him on the field. And it's like horrific. And it's like, so how much of an impact does he make? And the fact of the matter is, like, long term, you don't want to invest in running back, a single running back. Yes. Like, we still are well aware of that. I just feel like, man, this offense feels so helpless looking without him on the field. And that's maybe just how they're designed right now. Like, we talked about it yesterday, but my biggest concern was, like, how much of last season was Daniel Jones growing? How much of it was them coming up with an insanely good scheme to fit his skill set? But then once that scheme is figured out, does he have any kind of like reaction to it? Is there any way for him to do something different? And people are going to blame Dable. People are going to blame Kafka. But all I know is all I know is his sample size with the Bills and his sample size in his first season of Giants. Daniel Jones has a lot longer sample size 4 5 years with the Giants, 3 different systems, 3 different coordinators. So if it comes push to shove and you guys are going to pit me or anyone's going to pit me against those two, you know where I'm going with this. I hope they keep Dable. I'll just say it right now. And I think you're on the same page there, Nick.
100%.
Correct me if you're wrong. Yeah.
No, 100%. And also, man, I'm not trying to stick up for Dable or Kafka. Look, the Giants got embarrassed. Like,
Right.
First person you got to blame is the coach in those situations. But I think the Daniel Bellinger injury and them not being able to adjust, I think there's something to that. And I also just think the Giants are limited as an offense with Daniel Jones as their signal caller. I think that's just a sad reality. And I think Brian Dable is fully aware of it. I think we saw the frustration of Dable throwing the tablet. I wish he didn't do that. It's not a great look.
Yes.
It's definitely not a great look. But he's a fiery guy, Brian Dable, right?
Which
like the Giants have had some fiery coaches in their past. Like Tom Coughlin could get fiery. He would eat your ass.
Yeah.
Bill Parcells, one of the most fiery guys, man.
He wasn't fiery? McAdoo and Shermer. Nobody wants that. Like,
no. Judge had some fire to him. He was a little weird, though, a little bit different, but I appreciate that type of fire. And I understand the frustration, too. I think that was because of the Waller 7, which we'll go over that play as well. Waller was open. Like, you could have found Darren Waller.
He was NFL open, because I know Jordan Raanan was saying that he wasn't open, but, I hate to break it to Jordan, but like that's NFL open. You have to throw the anticipation. Like it's not, you don't want to wait for the guy to be open. Like that's not the point of playing quarterback. You're not supposed to just wait for the guy to be open and say, now he's open. That's how you lose in the NFL, by waiting for them to be open. You're supposed to throw it before they're open.
Tariq Woolen or whoever that was a very long defender, right? He was in an area to maybe where he could have made a play, but the right spot to a 6'6" tight end who can jump up and pluck it out of the air. You can put touch on that. That's
touch.
Very
the whole back pylon to work with, the whole back end zone to work with.
Yeah, so I just think
see Ben Solak's breakdown of that play. It was really interesting.
I think I did, yeah,
because he was questioning the ball placement too, and I was confused by that too because it looks like he the intended target ran a pivot route, and then Jones placed the ball on the outside shoulder of the pivot route.
I think Jones believed that Paris Campbell was just going to sit there. He didn't realize he was flowing to the back. I don't know if that's choice based on leverage. I'm not 100% certain. Both him and Wandale came off the motion, which I liked too, because this was the double China 7 route, only from a different formation, using Wandale in the motion as the outside player who's going to run that in route. They chose to run pivots there, but they also changed the personnel because what they did in the past with the double China was the tight end would be to the weak side where the running back choice route is. Matt Breida released that way, but that was Isaiah Hodgins. They actually used this with Darren Waller as the 7 to the side with the 2 wide receivers who were running the in, and then he ran that 7 route. He was open on that play. That was a rough look for Daniel Jones. It reminded me a little bit of 2021 when Daniel Jones would just try to trust the quick passing concept, and they would drive down on those at that point too. Remember against the Chiefs, Nick Bolton almost might have been a pick 6 actually to like start the game too on Monday Night Football, ironically enough.
And for those who have, because I saw this in your replies and mine, like for those who have asked, like, why did they resign him if they feel like they're limited or like they had to hide some of the come up with this crazy unique scheme last year to make him work? And the answer is they feel like he can grow as a player. We've talked about this in the past, but I need to reiterate this. They didn't sign Daniel Jones because of his first 4 years body of work. They signed him based on a projection. That's what contracts are. They're a projection into the future. They believe that Jones, and it's not over, it's just 4 games in the year, but they believe that Jones can progress mentally to the point where they can expand the offense and do different things that they want to do. They believe that he can go on a trajectory, and he showed enough signs of progress that he can become a different player than even he was last year when they had to run that smoke and mirrors offense. They believe that. That's why they re-signed him. But they also re-signed him with some outs in the contract. So it's not like they fully went all in on it, but they believe that we're going to take a chance on him. He's young. It's impossible to find quarterbacks in the NFL. The market also drives this decision as well. But also they believe that he can progress. It was a projection-based contract. So that's the answer to that one. It's not as if like they're just idiots and they couldn't figure this thing out, Dable and Shane. They thought they saw enough to believe that he can progress from a mental processing standpoint.
And he struck when the iron was hot too. You just won a playoff game. The offense was competent. Yeah, they're not going to be like, all right, you know how the locker room is so tight and everyone loves in New York. We're just going to say bye to you right now. And what's your alternative? What's your next option?
Right. That's
Tyrod Taylor. Like that's the market part of it. And I like Tyrod. I'm not trying to throw shade at Tyrod, but Tyrod gets on the field and he gets hurt a lot. He's a lot smaller than Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones has to play better. Like it's not an opinion at this point. Like that's just the straight damn facts.
Unfortunately, it is, and we'll see if it happens. Like he's going to be better with he's a better player with a good offensive line. We all know that. Like that's
Anybody
just
is.
anybody is, right? So let's get into some of the film breakdown now, Nick. So we're going to start with the second play of the game for the Giants offense.
Yeah, second play of the game. We got a bunch of the opening drive here from the Giants. A good opening drive that unfortunately stalled. But I liked this play because it's split pack GT bash quarterback counter with a bubble on the backside. So look what the Giants are doing here. You're going to pull Evan Neal and Marcus McKeithen. You can kind of see how they're off the line of scrimmage a little bit. And you have split back with Wan'Dale Robinson offset. So the Giants are going to go into the mesh point here. And if Daniel Jones, right now, he is reading number 10. Number 10 gets sucked a little bit too far inside, so he hands the football off to Wan'Dale Robinson with two lead blockers. So it's basically Wan'Dale against that safety who flies downhill and does a pretty solid job making this tackle. I just thought this was creative, and it also just kind of points to what the Giants did this entire game, which is packaged plays. And what I mean by packaged plays is there's a lot of RPOs, there's a lot of options for Daniel Jones. It's a big part of what the Giants had success with back in 2022. And here's another packaged play, because if Daniel Jones didn't like this, he could keep it. And now he's following McKeithen and Evan Neal as lead blockers. But he hands the football off, and this is a good chunk play on 2nd and 5.
Yeah, I love that they got Wan'Dale Robinson involved early in a different variety of ways, including here as a runner. We discussed in the offseason that could be something that comes into play. And with Barkley out, it's a good usage of his skill set.
It's an excellent usage of his skill set. And if you saw in the previous, this is the same play. You had Darren Waller, because I like how you motioned Wan'Dale Robinson, but not Darren Waller. You had Paris Campbell on the opposite side with the bubble. So that's 3 options for Daniel Jones. Hand the football off, run it yourself, or throw the football to the bubble. Giants rarely throw that bubble in this context. It's typically the decision is made at the mesh point, whether hand the football off or keep it yourself. Here he hands it off, good decision. And this is the very next play. It's a play action rollout. And this is a good job by Daniel Jones to avoid Jamal Adams. And he has Darius Slayton open here if we look. And I'm not killing Daniel Jones for this specific play. He has to avoid Jamal Adams. He gets Daniel Bellinger on the quick little dump off. But I think Daniel Jones is one of the best quarterbacks in the league at faking these handoffs, and he does it a lot. You see how he has that hand out there. You'll see it on the other end zone. But look at Darius Slayton at the top of your screen. It's pretty open right there. Now I don't think
he's ever looking there though. Unfortunately,
I don't think so either. I believe his eyes are on Jalen Hyatt on the crosser. But the one thing is, like, Jamal Adams just came at you. So who else is in the mathematical equation to be on Darius Slayton? It's little things like that. It's not the most egregious thing, but it's something, because a lot of quarterbacks will know, okay, that safety just blitzed.
Right.
Who's on Darius Slayton? Now you have the deep safety and you have the high-low with Wan'Dale Robinson in the flat, and Daniel Jones just doesn't even see it. So it's just like, damn. And luckily he finds Daniel Bellinger here to get up a few yards. But the difference is now you're setting yourself up for a 2nd and 3. That's an easy first down to Darius Slayton. He makes one man miss, could be a touchdown. So little plays like that can go a long way.
And a few other things about this play, like I give Daniel Jones credit for this incredible fake. You can even see it slightly pulls Jamal Adams in instead of him driving right at Daniel Jones. That's where he deserves the credit. The reason why there's some where you kind of take away a little credit is, why are we the team that opposing teams can just shoot off the edge against? Because no one respects Daniel Jones' ability to throw down the field. So they're just shooting guys off the edge consistently, because they don't have to put players like Jamal Adams in the deep half because of what Nick said. Jones is looking toward the sticks. And this is something my brother brought up last night at the game, Nick. And I put up a clip, the Wan'Dale Robinson clip you put up. I thought it was another good example of that. One thing I think that's a deficiency in Jones's game is when he does get out of a pocket and start to scramble, I feel like his eyes never go from high to low. His eyes are always straight toward the stick route, whatever route is near the sticks. But if he starts to read the defense high to low, and like you said, in this spot, this should be an easy read for him. He has a safety blitzing off the edge. What does that mean? Like you said, there should be an opening in that deeper half of the field on that side, where there is with Darius Slayton. So you don't want to kill him for missing Slayton here, but you also want to point out, like, he never is reading high to low. Eyes are always toward the sticks. Like, we credited him last year with doing a better job keeping his eyes forward. To some extent he did, but it's still like we never see the throw to Slayton here. We never see him roll out and throw something downfield. It's always to the sticks, and it's an issue for this team because, yes, he got he got a little completion here. They move the ball eventually, but you want the quarterback to understand, with the safety screaming off the edge, there could be something open in that deep half. And unfortunately here, he doesn't see it.
No, and he doesn't see it often. unfortunately, if we're just going to call a spade. But look, ball to ball right there. Daniel Jones is one of the best
Great
at
fade.
faking those. Ball to ball, and you're right. Jamal Adams changes his path, and then he's like, oh, crap, Daniel Jones is athletic, gets out of it. But he had Slayton here, and he missed it, and it is what it is. He didn't seem like he was even looking in that direction. And here we have a 3rd and 6, and I just wanted to, this is one of those first big plays of the game where I was like, yeah, I love having Wan'Dale Robinson back on the roster. This is just a simple, this is something the Giants run, something everybody runs. You have a 3-by-1 set. Matt Breida's offset to the weak side. And the 3 is, that means the innermost receiver is Wan'Dale Robinson. He is just going to run a quick little stick route. And you're going to use the number 1 and the number 2 to clear out space for Wan'Dale Robinson. And you have that pick right there by, I think it's Darius Slayton, who's the number 2 wide receiver, about 5 yards outside of Wan'Dale Robinson. He runs directly at his defender through the inside shoulder, which creates a pick against the off-leveraged defensive back who's over the top of Wan'Dale Robinson. And then there's nobody around Wan'Dale Robinson for a 3rd and 6. This is just a well-schemed play. A lot of NFL teams use it. It's not novel, and it's well executed by the Giants.
Yep. Great play. Well executed, and you get the natural pick. They're never going to call offensive pass interference there because they shouldn't. It's by the rules a legal play. Good job by Jones to throw from the far hash too. It's somewhat of like a far hash throw. He's lined up on the on the right hash, and he throws the football. So, decent play there. Here, what's the next play we got going here? 2nd and 11.
Yeah, this is a 2nd and 11. This is still on the first drive, I believe. This is a good cover 3 beater. And Jones ends up picking up 8 yards with his legs on this 2nd and 11 with 10:18 left in the first quarter. You have the jet motion, something the Giants incorporate a lot of with Paris Campbell, single back formation with Darren Waller as the wing out of 11 personnel. And look how many guys are kind of open on this play. Because this is a cover 3 beater. You're just running 2. Everybody's off leverage. You can see it's middle of the field close with the middle of the field safety. You have both cornerbacks who are in off leverage here. And both of them are just going to curl up in the voids with two offensive receiving weapons running to the flat in Paris Campbell and Gary Brightwell, which is going to expand the curl flat defenders. So in cover 3, both those curl flat defenders are going to be expanding outside of the numbers, and both of these wide receivers are curling just inside of the numbers. And Daniel Jones, look, the pocket isn't great with Evan Neal, who does a solid job recovering here. But there are throws to be made here, and it just doesn't happen. But he ends up picking up 8 yards. Again, I'm not killing him for this specific throw, but the play call had 2 receivers come open against the defense that, I mean, you watched the film.
Right.
How much did Seattle run cover 3? It was just cover 3 basically most of the game, cover 3 and cover 6. And it's just another throw that just didn't happen when it could have, really.
And these are the types of holes you want to find against cover 3, right? Like those 2 curls are throws that you can make. There are people somewhat in the vicinity, but you can stick those balls in there. And I just think, like, this is kind of one of those examples. This isn't even the best example of it, but this is kind of one of those examples where I just wish he would reset the pocket like I see Geno Smith doing all game and shuffle his feet and find a new landing spot within the pocket so he can throw the football. But, they taught him to run last year, and he likes to run a lot. And I feel like this year even more so. And I feel like this year he's staring down the line way more than he did last year. I think his eyes are going straight to the line off the snap, and I don't blame him. I get it. The pressure's bad, but some of these pockets, it'd be nice to shuffle and reset, stay in the pocket, because you're going to find your passing solutions from within the pocket. When you do run like this, your options are either run like he does here and pick up some yards with his legs, which he did a great job of last season, and he did a great job of in this game, or get lucky and throw a sideline type of throw, like off a scramble type play. But at that point, you're giving the defense the edge because the structure is broken from the play. The rhythm and the timing is broken from the play, from the passing standpoint as well. So, yeah.
I honestly think, dude, there are certain plays where Daniel Jones, he's trying to extend the play and use his legs, which is, we applaud that. But you just got to stay in the pocket. He does it too much. Like, how many times did he evade clean pockets?
That's my thought. I think people don't realize it. People saw the broadcast and people are shouting at us, but like, he evaded a good amount of clean pockets in this game. Not a good amount, but enough, right? Enough. And we can go over some more of those as well.
Yeah, so here are some telltale signs that the Seattle Seahawks are going to bring pressure. This is the play here. I'll run it real quick. That Devon Witherspoon just sacks Daniel Jones and no one accounts for him. 5-man protection. Daniel Orlovsky did a good job breaking this down, but there are a couple points that I noticed on the tape that I wanted to highlight as well. Look at the positioning pre-snap of the Seattle defender. So you have a 3-over-3 outside of the hash, but Witherspoon isn't really getting outside. Like, look how far inside Witherspoon is, close to that hash. And then look how wide Bobby Wagner is. Bobby Wagner is on that hash. So
that's such a tip off that Bobby Wagner. Yeah, that's like it's crazy, Nick.
The thought process is, if you're the Seattle Seahawks, you want to keep 3-over-3. You want that mathematical equation to be even. So you're going to put Bobby Wagner in a position to where he can easily cover whoever is going to be the inside release from that 3 wide.
You're cheating him over there pre-snap.
You're cheating him over their pre-snap. And if you look at Witherspoon does a solid job actually selling this. He takes steps, but his eyes just go right back to Daniel Jones, right? Daniel Jones is looking in that direction, looking at the motioning. Darius Slayton, who was kind of setting up behind Wan'Dale Robinson. Like, I like that kind of action out there. It's out wide as well from the far hash. But Jones needs to realize that this player might be coming. That has to be in your account. That has to be in the back of your mind. And he just overlooks it. And again, the Giants aren't even going to look at the field side where the 3 wide receivers are. Instead, they're going to try to get the football to Darren Waller, it appears like here, who was open, but it didn't matter because Seattle Seahawks brought this pressure because they probably figured that it would not be accounted for with the running back on the opposite side and the tight end on the opposite side, knowing that it's going to be a 5-man protection. It's going to be on whoever, maybe Daniel Jones, to account for Devon Witherspoon here. Nobody accounts for him, ends up being a sack.
Ideally, you want him to slide protection. Ideally, you want him to move Matt Breida over the running back and flip where he's blocking from, or you just want Jones to read it and try to throw hot. One of those 3 things.
It's the read it in the hot, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Because you know that guy could possibly come, because it ends up being 5-on-5. You have 5 guys on the line of scrimmage, but the end man to the boundary side ends up dropping off. You see him drop off. So you still have 5 rushers, but the protection never slid in that direction. And maybe it shouldn't, but you have to just be aware of the fact, oh crap, that guy could be coming. I got to count him in the blitz count.
Right.
If he does come, throw hot, which Daniel Jones did, I think, on the first play of the second half, if I'm not mistaken, to Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, he did do that on that play. And with the Giants are very lucky that this wasn't a sack forced fumble, because if you look at it, Daniel Jones seems completely unaware of the free blitzer. But my whole thing is like, yes, he had a good example of that in the second half, but in my mind, in year 5, dude, you have to be there. There can't be any of these anymore in year 5. If you're a great quarterback, like if you're just some developing dude who's like decent at times, like fine. But like Tom Brady, Eli Manning, all the good ones, they never have these issues. They're in so much control over the line of scrimmage pre-snap, and where they're not missing free blitzers like this, especially not like they may miss a free blitz if it's so well designed and disguised, right, Nick? But this is not that well designed and disguised. Bobby Wagner's not in the middle of the field. He's cheating over from the snap. Look at where he's aligned. Like, you got to be able to figure this one out as a 5th-year quarterback in everyone's mind, not my mind, everyone's mind, including Brian Daboll's, probably Daniel Jones's too, and Mike Kafka and Tierney and everyone. Like, you have to understand, this is not us being critical of Jones, not nitpicking Jones. It's 5th year. We need him to start taking more control over the pre-snap protections and understanding examples. And I think I'd be less angry at this, Nick, if I didn't hear your breakdown, because I wasn't really smart enough to consider the Bobby Wagner wrinkle there. But with the wrinkle of Bobby Wagner cheating like that, it's a bad look, I think.
You could see Wagner's head too. He's like turning and looking at those receivers, like those little like telltale signs, like not just your positioning and your spacing and your leverage, but it's also like Devon Witherspoon's looking at the quarterback and Wagner's kind of side eyeing. Oh, what are they doing over there with that motion? Let me see what's going on. It's just one of those things where you just got to be aware that could happen and have a contingency plan. You can't just go in there as a 5th-year quarterback and be like, oh, well, I'm just going to roll with this 5-man shitty protection that I'm going to get, and then just get absolutely clobbered.
Yep.
And now here is the 3rd and 11 where Daniel Jones misses Wan'Dale Robinson down the field. You can see him doing jumping jacks, getting his cardio in around the 40-yard line. And Jones bails this pocket. And I'm wondering, like, A, why is he bailing this pocket? Because it doesn't seem like Wan'Dale is going to – it seems like he's going to take this up the field and maybe break inside, but maybe he read that Daniel Jones was flowing outside and saw where the safety is. You could see him kind of cheating between the numbers in the hash. So he broke it on the 7. And then at this point – Wan'Dale Robinson entered his break. He's on the numbers. Daniel Jones has his eyes downfield. He is running, so it's not the easiest throw, but there's space. I've seen people be like, look, Quandre Diggs is baiting him. If you put that football towards the sideline, like Quandre Diggs isn't going to get there. You don't even see him on the screen right here. Like, this is about as wide open as you're going to get as a wide receiver in the NFL. And Daniel Jones has plenty of time, even though he evaded the pocket, to release this football, to throw this football to Wan'Dale Robinson, who – this underneath defender's occupied with Darren Waller. Jalen Hyatt's basically running out of bounds now on the drag route. So everybody's getting stuck to the sidelines, but Wan'Dale is your clear read. But Jones is just looking at Waller to see if Waller can maneuver his way in front of the defender, similar to the interception that he threw a few weeks ago, where Waller, I think against Dallas, where Waller just kind of stayed put. He's looking for that instead of looking beyond that and being like, that safety had a lot of depth. That safety was at depth. So who the hell is covering Wan'Dale Robinson if you have those 2 defenders in the middle of the field looking at Darius Slayton? So this is just like, he's not doing the math in his head of where are the defenders in relation to my receivers. That's like one of his biggest problems is post-snap. He doesn't put together the defensive movements and the route concepts that he might know or not know is happening, but it's just so robotic for him.
I think that was a great breakdown by you and a great way to kind of break that down in when you said he's not doing the math in his head, because that's what it is. Like that safety's playing at a crazy amount of depth. Like you guys can claim that he can't make the throw, but guess what? If you're saying he can't make the throw because of safety, that means you're actually you're by doing so, you're actually criticizing Jones, because Justin Herbert makes this throw every freaking time. And so does Patrick Mahomes. And so does all the quarterbacks who put you in Super Bowl contention. If your problem is that you think the safety is going to break on this, then you have a problem with the arm talent of the quarterback. But the issue I have is not that. The issue I have is twofold. It's one, goes back to the start of the play, man. It's him looking at the pressure. It's a 4-man pressure. The Giants do a really good job of picking up. They have a lot of guys in protection here. What do they have? 4 guys running routes, and they have 6 guys in protection here against a 4-man pass rush. If you give it a second, Daniel, the offensive line settles in here. Like, you don't need to leave this pocket. You need to stay in this pocket where you're going to have the best chance to make a throw from when you're not rolling right. And you need to let it resettle, and you need to just shuffle and reset like all the good quarterbacks do. And he did it last year better. And there's an example of him doing it later in the game that I'm going to throw up. But like, let's see it from this angle, and then I'll go back to the second part of the problem. But from this angle, like, catch the snap, he panics here. Go back to where he first panics real quick, if you can, Nick.
Yeah, of course.
So
and I'm wondering, like, this could, like, the pocket is wide open. Everybody's blocked. Everyone's
blocked. This is not a pocket to be leaving. And even if he doesn't, by the way, he can hit Slayton over the middle too. It's not just Wan'Dale. If he sits in this pocket, he can hit Slayton, who's coming over the middle as well, free. It's going to, he has to throw into the second window away from the linebacker, but this is just not a pocket to be escaping from. And I understand what people are going to say. When you get beaten down that much, when you have that much pressure, you start to see ghosts, you start to escape the pocket. That's not his fault. None of us are saying it's his fault. What we're saying is this is not going to lead to wins. What we're saying is this is not going to lead to offensive production. What we're saying is this is not good. We're not taking blame for who it is. We just don't want it to happen, because you can't win football games when you escape pockets like this. And when everybody sits there and tells us that he never had a clean pocket all game, what do you call this? What the hell do you call this? Like, this is a clean pocket. But then it goes to the second problem, Nick. When he's rolling right, every time he's looking, like you said, for Waller to win this route, he's looking to the sticks. He's never reading high to low, because if he is reading high to low, he's going to notice Wan'Dale Robinson wide open. He's going to make that throw. He's not an idiot. And maybe it's on him for not looking high to low, or maybe it's on him for what you said, the math problem of it all. Like, why is he not recognizing that there is space in that area of the field to throw the football into? Either way, you can say we're nitpicking by picking out these 4, 5, 6 plays, but in a game with this margin of error so small like this one, where the Giants defense did everything they can to give them a chance, you need to make these plays. They can't be throwaways on 3rd and 11.
It's a 3rd and 11, ladies and gentlemen. A 3rd and 11 throwaway. That requires boos no matter what. Not even the fact that you have a receiver who's wide open. I get it, man. People are like, oh, well, he's like 5'7" out there. It's like, dude, I don't know if Daniel Jones saw him or not.
He didn't.
Don't. He must not have, but you have to understand that that's a possibility, or maybe there's a lack of rapport between Daniel Jones and Wan'Dale because of the ACL injury. Maybe. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. But when you turn on the film and you see these misses, and it's not just a one-off, and even if it was just a one-off, you're not seeing the big plays be made either. And you brought this up a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was a very astute observation from you. Like, people are like, oh yeah, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, they miss plays. It's like, sure, they make a hell of a lot of plays, though. Daniel Jones, unfortunately,
you can afford to miss plays when you make plays, but when you don't make plays, you can't afford to miss the ones that you have.
Exactly, man.
It's unfortunate, but I would guess that, one, he's just not looking downfield. I think the eyes are just always to the sticks on these scramble plays. And until I see a bomb touchdown off of one of these, or some kind of 40-yard play or 30-yard play downfield, I'm just going to believe that. I don't know if I've seen a single one in his whole career while rolling right. I mean, you can talk about the Slayton run from Tampa. And if you find me one play or two plays, you're not understanding my point. My point is not the absolute. Maybe it's happened once or twice in 5 years, but once or twice in 5 years is the point, not that it's never. Like, it's like someone was arguing me on Twitter, Nick, and I know people don't like this, but I just find it so funny. So I'm going to bring this one time up, and I shout out to Chris and shout out to Frank, who's like, stop feeding the trolls, stop talking about them. But I'll do one thing just because I find it funny. Someone was like getting on me on Twitter because I called it an 100-yard pick six return instead of a 96-yard or a 97-yard pick six return. Like, that's literally what we're dealing with. That's the level of stupidity that we're dealing with at times, and why it's easy for us to get frustrated. But let's move on from that, Nick.
You know what I have to say about that?
There it is.
Oh, crap. I have it on loop. No. Sorry, guys. I'm new. All right. Let's get back to the plays here, ladies and gentlemen. So on this play, I just wanted to kind of highlight it. I liked this play. Is the 3rd and 4. The Giants just kind of isolate
Love
Matt
this.
Breida with a mesh concept, and he's not in the mesh. He's releasing from the running back position to the lone tight end side, I guess it would be, because it's a 3-by-1 set. And it looks like Evan Neal is kind of back a little bit. Almost got that Juwan Taylor call, if you know what I'm saying. But it's a 3-by-1 set. And I love how Matt Breida just releases in front of the face. First, he's looking for protection. Then he just releases. And you have a mesh concept that's, I believe, one of the receivers, maybe Darius Slayton, because typically when the Giants run this, they run mesh and then they run about a curl about 5 to 6 yards beyond the mesh, who sits in between the zones. It looks like it gets kind of muddled up here, but it just creates a lot of traffic for Bobby Wagner to cover Matt Breida out of the backfield. And this is an easy conversion for the Giants. And these are the types of plays that you need, man. This is a 3rd and 4. It's big time conversion that the Giants are trying to get. Giants aren't doing anything offensively. So just run some simple concepts, mesh concept. It looks like man coverage. It's not really handled all that well. It seems like there's a miscommunication from the Seattle Seahawks, because a bunch of people end up taking 2 receivers. There's 3 on them. And then there's Bobby Wagner against Darren Waller and Matt Breida. So I just kind of wanted to put this in here as well.
And I wanted to highlight one thing about this play. You did a good job breaking it down. I love the hustle from Darren Waller here. Look at Darren Waller coming across the field, gets out in front of Bobby Wagner just to get him in his way and allow for some extra yards after the catch for Matt Breida. And, people are questioning Darren Waller. I don't really question him personally. No, I just think this offense is an absolute disaster, and that's the issue here. But I love his effort here in a spot like this.
That's great effort. Kind of similar to another Giants player that the Giants, or another player the Giants traded for, like Isaiah Simmons on defense. The guy was hustling.
Great effort in this game, Isaiah Simmons. Great
everywhere. Looking forward to talking to that for the defensive podcast. All right, Let's move on to this 2nd and 17 with 1:17 left in the second quarter. Let me just scoot through this real quick. This is the same play that we just watched. You can see Bobby Wagner is way out leveraged against Matt Breida. Look, by the time he reacts, Matt Breida is already outside the hash, and Bobby Wagner, according to Matty Brown, has stone feet. So just a good play design. But back to the 2nd and 17. This is the almost pick 6 that is thrown by Daniel Jones to Tariq Woolen. This is just how defenses are playing the New York Giants to the field side. The Giants don't really throw to the field side all that often, and they're playing the Giants to the flat. And what I mean by that is, look at Tariq Woolen. He's aligned about head up on the outside wide receiver, but his hips and his eyes are shaded to the number 2. So what are they running? They're running a trap coverage here. They want Daniel Jones to throw to the number 2 to the flat. And then Tariq Woolen is just going to drive down on it and almost come away with a pick 6. This is similar to the pick 6 that the Dallas Cowboys had, where Saquon Barkley released to the flat, and Trevon Diggs hit him, popping the ball up in the air for an easy pick 6. This is similar to the Indianapolis Colts game. This is similar to a lot of film when the Giants do decide to throw to the field side, because for whatever reason, Daniel Jones won't make the throw outside the numbers beyond 5 yards. He's going to throw to the flat. And these teams are inviting that throw. But for whatever reason, the Giants never throw it. And here the safety is at least, he's outside of the numbers, but you can make the argument that he could cover the ground from that distance. But there are other plays where it's not that case, and the Giants just aren't making that throw.
You could throw back shoulder here, by the way. There's enough space to go back shoulder, or at least try it, right? If you go back shoulder, it's not going to be picked. It's going to be at least incomplete, and now they have to respect it, right? Like, that's the other thing. Like, try to make the throw sometimes. Make the freaking throw so they have to respect it, right? Like, I talked about this with Nick Turchin, Nick, who saw this play and sent me a DM, and he said that I was right, that it was the coordinator making the play call, which I thought was interesting. But he refers to it as press bail, read it coverage, which I wasn't too familiar with, Nick. So maybe you've heard of that and you can get into that. But but his opinion is, you're right. Like, the coordinator is making this play call because of Daniel Jones, and he's like any kind of minor deception. He gave me the breakdown in case anyone's interested. Obviously, those who are long-term listeners know Nick Turchin. He's now a coach in college football. He's a very bright football mind. He said basically what it comes down to with Jones is any kind of minor deception he's not good with. He can't get his eyes in the right place, and in his opinion, they have to move on, the Giants, from Daniel Jones. So that's just his evaluation. I feel like has some value.
Hard at this point. It would have been valuable information a while ago.
It's I love how, isn't that such like a Turchin breakdown too? Like, it's so terse and to the point. Like, there's no fluff at it at all. It's just like I love how he breaks.
He's a very direct individual.
He is a football guy. Like, that is what he is. Like, he lives, breathes, and eats football. That's his personality. He's what when people talk about football guys, that's him. But so just
I'm a big fan of Turchin. We had a lot of good times down in Mobile together. So yeah, well, I had a relationship with Turchin before I even knew who you were, which is
Yeah,
kind of
right.
funny. But yeah. So that press bail technique, though. So this is a cover 6 play, which is quarter, half, meaning that the defense is going to play cover 4 to one side of the football field and then cover 2 to the other side of the football field. On the cover 2 side, which is the Tariq Woolen side, you can get very creative with what his assignment is and how he executes said assignment. So here you can see how it looks like you're going to be in press, and then bail. Press bail means you're aligning like you're going to press, but then instead you bail to whatever assignment is that you're executing at the time. From a cover 6 on the cover 2 side, you can run Meg coverage, right? That means man everywhere he goes. You can do a lot of different things. Against the Giants, when teams are running cover 6, they are running some sort of variation. And the read part of the press bail read is he's reading the release of the number 2. So if that number 2 comes outside, he is going to cut underneath and he's trying to come away with a pick 6. That's the issue, though, that the Giants have, is every time this cover 6 is ran, that flat defender is always doing that. He's always reading the release of the number 2, and it doesn't even have to have a number 2 receiver there. It could be the running back releasing from the flat, like we saw against the Dallas Cowboys. And in order to combat this, the Giants have to hit that honey hole. They have to hit the hole between the safety, or at least threaten it to the field side, and the Giants just do not do that with Daniel Jones.
Yep. Unfortunately, they have not threatened it at all. And that's why you see a consistent array of corners sitting on these routes.
And look at the leverage of the apex defender. The apex defender is this individual right here, right? If you look at that leverage, what is that telling Daniel Jones? It's the defense just hanging sugar out in front of him, being like, hey, we're sweet over here. Look at the leverage. You're going to win on that outside route. It's all bait, bro. They're just fishing against Daniel Jones with these types of throws. They're going to align him off and to the inside, saying, hey, you're going to win on this out route, but every single damn time, that cornerback is going to sit on that shit.
That was another great observation by you, Nick, because I think that's like when Nick Turchin tells me any kind of minor deception he's not great with, that's a great example of that. That's a minor deception that the Seahawks use that trick him into thinking he has that. And of course he doesn't, because the other corner is just sitting on it.
And look, you can tell by the reaction of Devon Witherspoon. Devon Witherspoon knows that's exactly what he's doing. He's not just giving that, he knows. He's like, oh man, it worked. Oh, he dropped it. Oh shit. Like that's exactly, this is what defenses are doing to the Giants, whether you like it or not. I'm sorry.
Yep. It's an unfortunate fact.
All right. Here's the brutal interception. I think I don't even play the whole thing. I think I cut it, but okay. So again, you have a 3-by-1 set. You motion Wan'Dale Robinson to be the number 1 at the snap. You're going to have the 2 inside breaking routes off pivots with the 7 coming behind. Now, the defender, who a lot of people say is in the throwing lane, and I think it is close, would be Tariq Woolen. And Wan'Dale Robinson, maybe he has to do a better job distracting Tariq Woolen, and I would say expanding this route out a little bit more towards the pylon to get Tariq Woolen away from the back pylon. Because that's your objective right here in this coverage. When you have man coverage, you have a linebacker who is inside of both the hashes. Darren Waller is on the hash, and then you have a safety. Darren Waller runs right at that safety and then just curves around. Who's taking Darren Waller if Tariq Woolen is removed from that play? Tariq Woolen could make a play on the football, but I think a very well-placed football here, it's going to be a touchdown to Darren Waller, and I think Brian Dable would even substantiate that claim by the way he reacted, and if you want to read his lips and play that game. But instead, Daniel Jones went underneath, which is not necessarily a surprise. And I think there's just a miscommunication between him and Paris Campbell. I think Jones thought Paris Campbell was going to sit. Paris Campbell flowed to the inside. I don't know if this is a choice type route and he's reading the leverage, and Paris Campbell sells to the outside to get Devon Witherspoon to break to the outside just for him to flow back to the inside, catch it at the goal line, easy touchdown. Maybe that's what Paris Campbell thought. Daniel Jones and him were not on the same page, and ends up being an interception, unfortunately.
2 weeks ago, Nick, I saw a throw made on Monday Night Football by Matthew Stafford where he escaped the pocket, climbed the pocket, didn't escape it. He doesn't never bail. He climbed the pocket and then kept the stripe of his helmet and his eyes straight down the middle for so long before flipping his shoulder back and ripping it to Puka down the right sideline. When he kept his helmet straight down the middle of the field, Nick, it sucked up all the Bengals defenders. Now juxtapose that with this play. Look at Daniel Jones's helmet when he catches the snap. He is doing what Devon Witherspoon said he did. He's staring down the exact receiver that he's going to throw the football to the entire time, and then he's throwing the football in that direction. So when Devon Witherspoon says that, what we want to see here is some kind of like, look, I understand it's hard, but even if you just flash for a second to the Breida side before snapping back to that route, it's going to do a better job of maybe keeping Devon Witherspoon off. That probably won't, because every corner that plays the Giants now is just sitting on everything because Jones just throws everything short. And even in that sense, Nick, it's just crazy to me that Jones would continue to throw everything short when he knows and he's heard and he's seen on film that everyone's just sitting on his routes. Shouldn't that mean to him, like, light bulb goes off in his head? Let me try to bait them into thinking I'm going to throw short and then throw long. But apparently that's not an option for him, I guess. But like, the point of him is, like, look at his helmet, man. His eyes are just directly in that direction from the entire time.
Yeah, that's a concept where you can read multiple routes off of it, but I don't even really see him check Waller too much on this play. It looks like his eyes go directly to Paris Campbell. You're right.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because
Yeah,
at first I wanted to maybe give him the benefit of the doubt, say, yeah, well, it's a concept where you have a high low, so you can just look in one location. But it doesn't even look like he's looking at Waller all that much, and he just thought he was going to have Paris Campbell in front of Devon Witherspoon. One thing I wanted to highlight too on the backside, and I'm not blaming Jones for this, but maybe the Giants just should look to use Isaiah Hodgins more in the red zone. Watch Isaiah Hodgins' route here. One inside.
Yeah.
Now, it's unfortunate that it cuts off and you have those two underneath defenders, so maybe you could say the football wouldn't be able to get there. But Hodgins is just very good at the top of his break. Watch him stutter those feet, delayed release, fire off that outside foot, and he's open against the cornerback who was on him now.
And he was good in the red zone last year, Isaiah Hodgins. That's where he was probably the best red zone receiver.
He has the only red zone receiving touchdown. No, well, I guess Saquon Barkley did as well against Arizona, but that was on him in a similar type of play where it was just a slant, went inside, and then Daniel Jones delivered in the throwing window. I mean, the throwing window would be there. It would be difficult with those underneath defenders who wouldn't be flowing in that direction if Daniel Jones didn't already throw the football, so you got to take that in context. But I'm just impressed by how Isaiah Hodgins creates separation despite the fact that he's not special as an athlete relative to NFL talent.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation and a good observation. Maybe that's something they can work in. Use him more in the red zone because he was very successful for them last year there.
And here's just a 4th and 5. Wan'Dale converts. I think this is probably the best throw from Daniel Jones from the far hash to the outside shoulder before that defender who got dragged upfield a little bit by that release. As you can see, this is a very similar type of concept that we just broke down, Dan. Only now that defender turned his hips. You see how that defender turns his hips? That gives Daniel Jones the okay to throw the football. Because I don't think I included a play, but there was another play on film where it was a similar type of concept. Giants just trying to run stick to the number 2. And Daniel Jones saw the leverage of that defender to the outside over the number 1, and he hesitated like crazy to throw that football. And he just tried to bait and then look to the 1 to just get that defender to sink, and then he fired the football to the 2. I don't think I included that. But here you could see he's precise and deliberate with his delivery, and I think that's probably the best throw of the game from him on the outside shoulder away from Devon Witherspoon from the far hash.
Yeah, I had a couple other throws that I would put in contention, but the one time he threw to, but we'll go over those.
It's a 4th and 5.
It is a 4th and 5. Yeah, this is definitely up there. It's one of 3 throws. He had 3 that can. I'd say 4. I would say the scramble play to Breida also deserves to be in the mix, where he kind of broke the pocket and found him on the sideline.
And I wish I included that hesitant play because at least now on Jones's radar. Right. And you could see there is a distinct action from this cornerback that gives Jones the okay to throw the 2. And it's that flip of the hips right there. Yep. Once that defender flips the hips, Jones can fire the football, and Jones does. Well executed on a 4th and 5 by Daniel Jones. But at least now we're seeing on film Jones realize how defenses are playing him. And I don't have the hesitant play in here, but I did see that. And then you have this play of him firing the football in a good location once that cornerback to the outside committed to the number 1.
Exactly. All right, Nick, anything else on tape you want to go over before we break down some of the superlatives for the week?
I have just the quarter 4, 2nd and 10 interception as well that we have. This is just, he waited way too long. But if you look at Darren Waller at the bottom of the screen, man, this is like another math thing. He's wide open at the bottom. And Paris Campbell just takes forever to clear. Bobby Wagner did such a good job sinking underneath Campbell. You can see how he expands. Daniel Jones trying to fire into that throwing window on the dig. But if you just look at the bottom of the screen, no one is with Waller, but that's not where Daniel Jones' eyes were. Daniel Jones was looking for the dig route, stayed on the dig route.
Predetermined. He's predetermining the dig route here.
Way too long he stayed on the dig route. He sees 21 in outside leverage and knows he's going to have Paris Campbell against Bobby Wagner in the middle of the field. So it makes sense from that standpoint, right? And you have the safeties who are deep. But, man, you just waited way too long, double-clutched the football, and
such a frustrating watch when you see him predetermined pre-snap stuff like that, like back to basic rookie type shit right here with this predetermined. I'm just going to throw the dig. I'm going to throw the dig. I'm going to throw the dig. And of course, the dig's not there.
No, and Bobby Wagner, I mean, he's old maybe, but he did a really good job. This is the play I feel like a lot of people are getting really pissed at Evan Neal for, because you can see how Evan Neal blocks Darren Waller.
Oh,
That's what a
Darren
lot of
Waller,
people are
yeah,
saying. I mean, I think that's overblown.
completely agree.
He's trying to get Darren Waller out on his route and then assume his assignment. Yeah, he's slow and he's not in the best position, but he's just pushing Darren Waller out of the way so he can handle the defender who's loops inside and then loops inside and ends up hitting Daniel Jones, of course, because he's Evan Neal. But that I'm not giving any much credence to. Oh, Evan Neal blocked Darren Waller. That's stupid and silly.
Agreed on that front.
And then
All
I
right,
had
Nick.
the one Shane Lemieux
Yeah.
play.
Oh God, this one's gross.
Yeah, so this is Draymond Jones, who is a pretty damn good football player. I'm looking at Evan Neal's feet, or I mean, Shane Lemieux's
Shane
feet.
Lemieux.
I'm like, is he stepped up? No, man, he just gets uprooted and tossed to the side, bro. Like that's just
Brutal.
you
That
can't
shouldn't
have.
happen for a starting offensive lineman.
And there was another play that was similar to this, but it was weird because Marcus McKeithen pulled and the defensive lineman over Marcus McKeithen stayed with Marcus McKeithen. And Shane Lemieux thought he was blocking somebody else, and then he got blindsided, and he just got tossed to the side. And I was like, okay, a little bit understandable, just a miscommunication on who his assignment was. Defensive lineman pulled with McKeithen. You don't see that all that frequently. But then on this play, this was a couple plays later, I just see him just get tossed to the deck, and I'm just like, oh, gosh, it's brutal. All right, man.
Yeah, the play strength is just not there for Lemieux. Lemieux is obviously somebody who they're just relying on because they have no other option. But I just think at this point, any kind of street free agent would be better than Shane Lemieux, even though he doesn't know the system. Just anyone who's played any snaps in the NFL, like and was drafted, has played just any games, just whatever. At this
was
point,
drafted, was drafted in the first round by the New York Giants, back in 2013.
Yeah, that you don't want that. But like, yeah, I'd even consider Eric Flowers over Shane Lemieux at this point at guard. And I'm not even kidding. That's how sad it is. Let's go over some superlatives here, Nick. Let's go start with unheralded player of the game. I think we're gonna have the same pick again as we had last week.
Yeah, man. Matt Breida. Matt Breida made what 222 yards. Game. That's a lot of twos. Yeah, man. He extended and he actually left plays on the field. That's not me disparaging him. He did. He slipped a couple times. I felt like Matt Breida was.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make the argument that he was the best player on the offense as well, but I wanted to reserve that for somebody else.
I think he had some good reads in the run game too, which has surprised me a little bit between the tackles. I wasn't expecting as much from him.
He's explosive too.
He is explosive. He'll get my unheralded player as well. Best route run. We both struggled with this one. I didn't come up with anything. Did you?
Yeah, the Paris Campbell one on the goal line.
Okay.
No, I'm just joking. It was the pick six. No, I didn't have one. It wasn't really one that stood out as like, oh, wow, this is an excellent route. I guess you could say the Isaiah Hodgins one on the backside of a pick six, but what are we doing here?
Yeah, we can't go that one, but that would be something. All right, best throw. I think we have different ones here. So you had the Wan'Dale Robinson stick, correct?
C.
I have a couple. Let me get these going now on my Twitter. So this was my best throw of the game. It was a 2nd and 9. Jones does something we rarely see from Daniel Jones, which is throw to the field side from the far hash. I just really like two things about this play. The throw, actually testing this area of the field from Daniel Jones. And more importantly, at least for me, Nick, it's just how he navigates the pocket. It's not a panic bail like he has been doing. It's a step up and reset like the good ones do. Step up, reset, fire. That's a great play by Daniel Jones. If he does that more often, the Giants are going to have more success on offense. That's what we need to see more of. So that was, for me, the best.
Go back to that play, too, because if you look at that play, the Giants are also just taking advantage of how that outside corner. No, how that outside cornerback is handling the number 1 and the number 2, Tariq Woolen.
I'm like a grandpa when it comes to this technology.
Oh, no, yeah, you're you're terrible.
It's like my dad. I feel like it, but here, sorry. Are you streaming this play now?
Are you on the computer, Dad? It's no, but if you rewind a little bit, Dan, and you go look at the leverage of Tariq Woolen. This is to the field side, mind you. So how do the Seattle Seahawks play this when you have 2 receivers? They're midpointing. Now you can roll it for a little bit. Tariq Woolen, number 27, is going to midpoint the 1 and the 2. You can see the outside release from the 2 and then the number 1. It's a switch release, something the Giants ran a lot last year. You can roll it a little bit more. Watch how Tariq Woolen stays in between in relation to Darius Slayton with his eyes on Darius Slayton, but restricts the space from that switched released original number 2, now number 1 wide receiver. That's called midpointing, where he's basically responsible to both and he's going to read the quarterback and he's going to react accordingly. But it's very hard to defend your blind spot with this type of leverage, with this type of coverage. So Daniel Jones, and this is one of the reasons why I love this play, because you're right. He steps up into the pocket. That was very well managed by him, but he also fires the football into a location that's very difficult for Tariq Woolen to decelerate and then come down, because he was midpointing the 1 and the 2 until that original one, which was Darius Slayton, ended up getting into the linebacker and the safety's purview. So that's a very good play by Daniel Jones.
And that'll be my best throw of the game there from Daniel Jones. Let's go back to the mix and say best play call for you.
Yeah, best play call was the tight end leak. Dan, they called the tight end leak. We brought this up with Matty Brown. They had the tight end leak, only it was that with Adam Thielen in the Carolina game, and he was wide open, but Andy Dalton was sacked. Well, the Giants called tight end leak here, and Daniel Jones, I don't think he was sacked, but he was severely harassed, and the leak play was very poorly executed by the players. That wasn't necessarily on the play caller, though. And the leaking tight end was Lawrence Cager. I'm going to imagine that Lawrence Cager probably wasn't supposed to be the leaking tight end. I think it was probably supposed to be Darren Waller, and Daniel Bellinger was going to be the blocker on that play, and that's how it was set up. Darren Waller was the blocker because there was no Daniel Bellinger. So it was a poorly executed play, but a well-called play. And I wanted to give the Giants coaching staff some credit.
I'm going to give them my best play call is going to be the one you broke down earlier, the 3rd and 4 with Matt Breida, where Darren Waller hustled to give him some extra yards. I just love that play call against that defense. So it's the one for me. Best player overall for you.
I said Wan'Dale, man. I'm just glad he's back. Wan'Dale Robinson is the perfect wide receiver for this system and how they're set up right now. And I don't know if that is belittling or if that's a compliment. I'm not really sure. But I like Wan'Dale Robinson. I think he's a solid football player who adds some juice, and he's really tough. He had the one play I wish I included. Actually, I might have, where he got hit. It was like an end around, or it wasn't an end around, but he got the football to the edge and he was running along the edge, and a safety came down and hit him in the leg, and he just kept his balance. He kept running until he got chased out of bounds. And I was like, holy shit, Wan'Dale, there you go. Some contact balance for the little guy out there. So yeah, I'm going to say Wan'Dale.
Yeah, and contact balance was definitely something we saw on his tape in Kentucky. Definitely something he has. I'm going to give it to Wan'Dale as well. I struggled with who to give it to between Wan'Dale and Breida. They're basically the only two who deserve even a consideration, unfortunately, for this. And I don't really think either had too good of a game, but we're doing the best we can here relative to the team. So Wan'Dale, let's go pass blocking grade 1 through 10 for you.
Geez, like a 1.7. It wasn't good by any means. It was bad. It was very bad. Jones and Paris Campbell, weird, got sacked 11 times. I do think a lot of those were on the quarterback, though. And I do think some of those were also, like you said, just Daniel Jones getting tracked down and tackled at the line of scrimmage or out of bounds. And it was just like, but still, he got killed plenty back there. So 1.7.
I'll go 1.1. I agree. Some of those sacks weren't on the line, but even so, just watching those individual reps from Azudu and Neal and McKethan and Lemieux, even Bredesen struggled at center. It's just everyone had a tough game. Run blocking 1 through 10 for you.
I had a 2.6. Wasn't good. And I felt like Matt Breida maximized his opportunities other than the times when he did slip up. But in terms of finding the hole, Matt Breida did a good job, and he's a small guy, so he can get really skinny through the hole. So yeah, I had a 2.6.
I had 2.4. I think Matt Breida maximized what he was able to get. I don't have too much credit for the offensive line. I saw some good moments from Evan Neal. I saw one good moment from Josh Azudu. I didn't really see too much else good from the run blocking. So, and not having Daniel Bellinger really hurts their ability to run block as well. So that was an issue too. All right. That's all we have today on the All-22 Film Podcast, our longest one yet. I guess that's what happens when a game looks this bad. Hopefully we can do a long one for a good game at some point. I hate breaking down tape like this, Nick. It's really, it takes a lot of the fun out of it. And this is a job too, but it was fun. It's fun when they're winning, and it's fun when the tape is good. And it's just not fun to watch film like this. Like
performing these autopsies, we're like morticians out here watching this film.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for those tuning in. I know it's going to get tough. It's going to be hard if the season spirals, but please help us out, support us, keep tuning in. We're always going to look forward. We're always going to look into players who can help this team moving forward. If the season is in fact lost at some point and the playoffs are out of contention, we'll be looking at players that factor into the future. We'll be considering the tough questions like, should you move a Saquon Barkley at the deadline? Should you look to move some of these players that aren't going to factor in the future? We're going to consider other hard, difficult situations too. Like, is Daniel Jones the quarterback of the future, or is it time to maybe consider quarterback in this draft? Those are the questions that we will answer and we will look forward to if the season goes the wrong way. But hopefully the Giants can get back on track somehow, some way, because that will make things so much better for everyone involved. Until then, keep it locked and loaded. Defensive film review on the way as well. That one will definitely be more fun, at least from my first half viewing of it. It was great. And I'm the type of guy who's not going to bash them for their performance in garbage time, especially after the offense put them in the position they put them in this game. Despicable in a lot of ways. So for me, we'll see what happens there, but excited for that one, Nick, because that one will be a little bit more fun. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.